Raising Arkansas's Readers, the campaign for grade level reading, is brought to you by a grant from the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation.
Hello and welcome to Raising Arkansas's Readers, the campaign for grade level reading. I'm your host, Jancy Sheets. Arkansas benchmark exams have shown a steady rise in reading proficiency by the end of third grade over the last 6 years. However, too many children do not read proficiently. The next step is to continue the growth to close the reading gap and improve educational achievement across the board for Arkansas's children. Over the next hour, experts are going to share with us why proficient third grade reading is so very important, what's being done to improve Arkansas's reading gaps, and how you can help. Joining me now to start this conversation are Ralph Smith, Managing Director for the National Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Dr. Sharice West Scantleberry, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, and Rich Huddleston, Executive Director of Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. Thank you all for joining us this evening and for discussing this very important topic. Let's start off with this campaign, Arkansas Campaign for Grade Level Reading. What is it and what are you hoping to achieve?
Absolutely. The goal of the Arkansas Campaign for Grade Level Reading is by 2020, all of Arkansas's third graders are reading proficiently by the end of third grade.
And why third grade? This kind of seems like an odd age. You would think high school, kindergarten. Why third grade?
Third grade is important because it marks the transition from learning to read to reading to learn. So that if you're not able to read by the end of third grade, you then run the risk of not being able to read to learn. Read to learn math, read to learn science, read to learn menus, read to learn just generally.
This is a pretty lofty expectation, all by 2020. Why such a high expectation?
If we don't set the bar high, we won't aim for anything high. So for us, it is about setting a high bar, setting a goal, and working towards that goal. We don't believe it's a lofty goal. Arkansas has the resources that we need to make it happen. We just need to harness those resources, be intentional and thoughtful about it, and achieve and then achieve that 100%.
There are several issues, though, impacting third grade reading. Rich, briefly explain these, and we're going to go more in depth in the program on these.
Sure. In addition to what happens in the classroom, the research, which the Annie Casey Foundation a couple years back put out a really great report on that, and then we summarized a lot of that research this past fall, really shows that there are 4 major impact areas that really impact a child's ability to read proficiently, and that we must address if we're going to get every child there. They include improving school readiness, and the research clearly shows that far too many kids, especially low-income kids, enter school behind their peers, and in many cases never catch up. And we also know that most early brain development, about 85%, actually occurs before age 5. And so this is a really critical age, but unfortunately we have far too many kids, especially low-income kids, who are less likely to be read to and are less likely to have access to things like quality prenatal and health care, quality early care, quality preschool education. And as a result, many low-income kids may hear as many as 30 million fewer words than their wealthier counterparts.
That's substantial.
And, yes, it is. And these types of interactions are really critical for language development and literacy. Second major impact area is chronic absence. And we have far too many kids in the younger grades especially that are missing large segments of school time, missing 20 days or more, 1/10 of the school year. And I think the old adage still applies that if you're not in school, you can't learn. If you're not in school and can't learn, then you're more likely to fall behind your peers. And one of the things that we know about chronic absence is that it's really a key predictor of dropout rates. And so, so chronic absence is, bad news all the way around. Third impact area is reducing summer learning loss. While all kids can really learn at the same rate, the issue is that for many low-income kids, they actually lose ground over the summertime. And so, so when they come back from the summertime, they may have to spend time relearning basic skills and material that they learned the year before, which of course can put them behind their peers. And in fact, low-income kids can actually lose 2 months of reading achievement over the summer months, whereas their wealthier peers, in fact, actually make gains over the summertime because they have access to more books and because they have access to quality, enriched summer learning experience that most low-income kids do not have. And I think the fourth impact area would be trying to improve parental and community involvement. I think the research is pretty clear that our kids do better and our schools do better when kids and communities are actively involved in the education of our kids and when they're actively involved in schools. I think one critical part of this is really making sure that, that parents read to their kids and making sure that their kids have books. But unfortunately, far too many low-income kids with working parents either don't have time or don't take the time to read to their kids. And so this really puts them at a disadvantage.
And we are going to discuss all of these issues more in depth coming out throughout the program. I want to talk about this local campaign as part of a national campaign that's going across our country. Ralph, briefly explain the national campaign.
Well, the national campaign really was started 2 years ago in response to a call to action by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. That call to action challenged communities across the country to step up and to move the needle on grade level reading and reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade. And so we are really excited about what is happening here in Arkansas.
Is this something that all states are doing and have adopted, or is this something that is specific to Arkansas?
Well,
as far as a statewide campaign?
There are about a dozen states around the country that have moved on this statewide, but what we are seeing, 124 communities in 34 states, 350 school districts in those communities, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands have really said publicly that they're going to take up this issue, and we are looking so anxiously because we expect that that 124 number is going to change. It's going to change next month because of what is happening here in Arkansas. Now, what the campaign tries to do is to mobilize communities to do 3 things. One, to support schools and school leaders and educators who want to work to make sure that every child has quality teaching in every classroom every day. We start there. But we also know that that won't be enough unless we work with the advocates and providers to make sure that we have a real system of care services and support for all children from the prenatal period through 3rd grade. And then what you're hearing here in Arkansas is a very important 3rd leg. We've got to mobilize communities, the civic leaders, the public officials, parents and other stakeholders in the communities to step up and take on the challenge of finding, owning, and implementing community solutions to the 3 problems that you've heard here today. We've got kids who start out too far behind, kids who fall behind during the school year because they're missing too many days of school, and kids who lose ground over the summer and come back to school in September farther behind than when they left in June. To the extent that communities can mobilize around these three problems, we think we've got a shot at seeing here in Arkansas and in states and localities across the country a significant improvement in what happens to kids by the end of 3rd grade. We think grade level reading and grade level reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade is a real possibility with the kind of leadership that we're seeing here in Arkansas.
Where do we rank right now compared to the rest of the country?
Well, I wish I could say here in Arkansas that you were leading the list. You're not. You're in the bottom quartile.
We have room to grow.
Lots of room to grow.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. We're going to discuss these issues more in depth coming up. And the first one we want to tackle is school preparedness. There are programs going on throughout the state already to try to prepare kids for school. Here's one such program.
Javen is doing exceptionally well. I mean, we're so proud of him. His learning abilities have really accelerated. His English and his math skills, his reading is phenomenal. He had his introduction to the ABC program, PreK, when he started at 4 years old. From the first week that he started, I noticed his accomplishment in his learning skills.
He would always come home excited and eager, and he was ready to go back to school. It's like, wow, for him to be 4 years old and eager to go to school, you know, and to wake up early in the morning to catch the school bus, I mean, I was amazed.
The staff there are amazing. They make learning fun. It's not like, oh, let's sit at this desk and look at this book. You know, they read books together.
Kindergarten is not like it used to be. Now it's like the first grade, so they really need this program in order to be ready for school and be ready to learn.
Her math skills are off the charts. She even does like word problems, and she loves those. When she goes to the library, you never know what she's going to get. She always comes home with different books. Sometimes it's princesses.
About like a princess parties.
To dinosaurs.
And dinosaurs I didn't know. They tell us what kind of dinosaurs are. And they have crazy names. T-Rex, pterodactyl.
He's always coming home with something new that he's read.
Huckleberry Finn was captured by his father, by his stepfather, and he didn't like him, so he ran away.
He loves to read the fiction books.
I like books like Huckleberry Finn because when you read and then you stop at a point, you never know what's gonna happen. And then when you start reading again, you get excited, and you keep getting more excited every time you stop.
Joining me now to continue the discussion on school readiness are Gina Dickey, Program Coordinator for Childhood Services at Arkansas State University, and Tanya Russell, Director of Child Care and Early Childhood Education at the Arkansas Department of Human Services. Thank you both for being here. Gina, when we're talking about being ready for kindergarten, what does it mean to be prepared and be ready to go to kindergarten?
I think one of the things we need to start with saying that children are born learning. And their brains are wired to take in all kinds of information, and probably the thing that adults can do that enhances that most is provide a safe environment where they can be curious and explore. And the other thing I think is conversation, lots of conversations with the adults in their life that ask open-ended questions, explain what they're seeing around them. And those skills will lead to thinking skills that they'll need in math and literacy. They will provide opportunities so they learn to communicate their own needs when they get to school. And I think the other things that we can't negate are self-help skills for little kids. That when I come to kindergarten, that I can button my own coat and tie my own shoes. Not only do I use small motor skills that help me later hold a pencil and write, but I think most kindergarten teachers would thank us that they can spend their time with activities regarding learning and not those skills during their day.
So Tanya, are Arkansas kindergartners ready for school, and how do you measure something like this?
Well, all public schools in Arkansas administer an early learning inventory on children that are entering kindergarten, either the first day or sometime during that first period of school. So a lot of the children that are entering, particularly those in our Arkansas Better Chance programs that are state-funded pre-K, are coming in about 10 or 12% above children that have not had that experience. So their higher income counterparts are also faring well on that early learning inventory. They're all pretty prepared, but there is a small group of children who may not have access to a high quality pre-K program or who are not participating in some activity to help them be better prepared that are not doing as well on that early learning inventory assessment or screener that is used when they first start school.
And we are talking today about third grade reading levels. How does being prepared for kindergarten impact or affect third grade reading levels?
I think back to those conversations we have with children from the time they get here until they enter school, their vocabulary is probably the best predictor of their third grade reading. I have to hear and learn about things like cars and trucks and trains before I can read about transportation and really comprehend that. So I think starting behind with things, Rich mentioned that earlier in the program, I may be 18 months or more behind my peers when I start kindergarten. And even the best kindergarten teachers, they can really make much strides in that first year to bring them up, but their peers don't sit still waiting on them. So if I start that far behind, it is very likely I stay behind by the time I'm the third grade.
In the vocabulary alone, we mentioned earlier in the program, 30 million words that some kids are at a loss of not knowing when they get to this third grade level, and that's hard to catch up.
Right.
So how can we prepare kids? What can we do to get them ready for kindergarten?
Sure. Well, one huge problem for low-income children is access to reading material. And to give you an example, for low-income children, their access is one book per 300 children. For their middle-income peers, they have 13 books per child. That's a significant difference in the ability to access written materials that are appropriate for that age group of children.
How about access to libraries? Do we have a great library system here in Arkansas?
Absolutely, and I think programs that reach out to children and offer, and young families with younger children that offer reading programs. Our participation in our Better Beginnings program for all licensed child care providers in the state that are really wanting to focus on helping children be more prepared or to provide those safe learning environments and curious learning environments. Home visiting programs. Arkansas has quite a number of home visiting programs, but making sure that families are aware of those and that the programs are really focused on reading and encouraging that reading between children and their families. Programs like Reach Out and Read and the Imagination Library, both of which put books in the hands of children, books that they start when they're first born with the pediatrician in a program like Reach Out and Read, and the Imagination Library that's available in some counties in the state where a child gets a book every month for the first 5 years of their life. So building that access to print material is very important. And then our library system obviously is also another one, and having programs that reach out in the community to families with young children and encourage that love of reading early on.
So we do have programs that are in existence, but are we doing enough, and do we have adequate funding for all of these programs?
I think certainly for pre-K, and I know there are folks who are going to be talking about that, but you know, we are targeted and we only serve about 70% with the funding that we have of the children that are eligible, and so there's still a lot of children that do not have access to high quality pre-K. You know, between Head Start and pre-K, we still have some gaps there.
And getting the word out too, even to people that are eligible and are maybe not taking advantage of it.
Well, actually, the funding is just not there to serve all the eligible children. Right now we have about 16,000 children that are 3 and 4 that would be eligible for pre-K if we had the money for those classrooms. So we've done some great things with pre-K, and we've served a lot of children, but there's more children to serve. And then when you're looking at 0 to 3, we have a new quality rating improvement system in our state called Better Beginnings. And we really hope we can encourage child care providers to be part of that quality initiative, and hope that parents will encourage their providers, because it will open up resources available to those children in those programs before the pre-K age.
And something else to talk about is some kids even face challenges before they're born with the lack of prenatal programs here in Arkansas.
Absolutely.
Have you seen this with kids trying to catch up from learning disabilities and things that they faced even before they were born?
Absolutely, and that's why the home visiting program, particularly when you're reaching out to a pregnant mother, perhaps, and making sure that she's linked into good prenatal care, health care, and that she's aware of programs like the home visiting programs that are maybe going to work with her on her parenting skills and her reading skills with her child, or other types of services, center-based services that she may need for that child when she maybe goes back to work or is attending school or whatever it may be for that particular parent. But yes, we do see that, and we know a lot from the brain research about the impact of that if we don't have those kinds of programs in place or supports for those families.
Anything else you ladies would like to talk about maybe programs in existence or things that you're hoping to get started here in Arkansas?
We just want to encourage that communities look at ways to continue to increase the capacity to serve more children in high-quality pre-K. You know, besides state funding, there are a lot of school districts and other programs that are using some of their funds, and communities kind of come together. So we just continue to look at creative ways to serve these children in the very best high-quality programs that they can create, and that we can work with them to provide those resources on.
Okay, thank you both for being here tonight. Another issue facing third grade reading is chronic absence in schools. The Lavaca School District is one of about 15 school districts in Arkansas that have school-based health centers. Take a look at how these centers are improving school attendance.
Most teachers, parents here in our community and our school would say that having the clinic on campus has definitely increased student attendance.
I think overall they're staying more healthy. A lot of the kids on Medicaid, they have their well child visits that are mandatory. We are seeing more of those well child visits.
Like if I'm at school for one whole day, like if I come back, a whole pack of it'll be like from the table to here, like that's much work. Because we do a lot of work in our class. If you're not sick, you can catch up on your grades. Like if you got bad grades, you can like catch up and have straight A's. And if you're sick, you can't catch up, you just get lower grades.
With the clinic and with dentistry here, you know, it's a real good beneficial tool because, you know, you're not looking so much for downtime. If I have to take them out for one whole day,
I'd probably check them out an hour earlier just to get them to Fort Smith, whereas here they just go maybe 5 minutes before their time, and then they're back onto their work.
If a student is in class, of course they're going to learn more.
School absences have actually dropped by over 2,000 since we've been here. Staff absenteeism had dropped by over 20% since we've started having the clinic here, so it is working.
Chronic absence is one area of needed focus when working to improve learning. To expound on this portion of our discussion, we have Hetty Chang, Director of Attendance Works, and Jared Cleveland, the Assistant Commissioner of Fiscal and Administrative Services for the Arkansas Department of Education. When we're talking about chronic absence, how would you define it? How many days is too many when it comes to school?
I look at this as a percentage. Missing 10% or more of a school year, which is, if you have 180 days, I think it's about 176 days here is a whole school year. It's 17.6 or 18 days over the entire school year, makes a child chronically absent. But it's important to break this down because a key to intervening on chronically absent children is knowing when it's happening. So if you look at it over the course of a month, it's just 2 or 3 days every single month could make a child chronically absent.
And you may not realize that the days are adding up if you have 2 here or 3 here. So why is it an issue for kids to miss school?
It's an issue, well, there's the common sense understanding, which is if you're not in school, you can't benefit from all the learning that's happening in the classroom, the reading materials, the interaction with your peers, the instruction from the teacher. And if kids miss too much school, they're chronically absent, it's actually a proven early warning sign. First, that kids aren't reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, but if it persists, it actually is a real key indicator of dropout in middle and high school.
So it's an early indicator for that. So Jared, how are we doing in Arkansas? How prevalent is it?
Well, in Arkansas, our studies have shown that 1 out of every 10 kindergarten and 1st grade child has chronic absence, and it goes up. That percentage goes way up when you talk about economically disadvantaged students. In fact, the rate's 2.5 times higher.
How do we track this across the state?
We have a student information system, it's called SIS, that the Department of Education administers, and it's an ABSCAN. And what we do is every public school has a student information link to the state network, and they track absence and attendance and grades and everything through that state information system.
So are the parents notified when the kids miss a couple of days here, a couple of days there? At what point are they alerted to the situation?
The system generates automatic letters at different intervals of absences. 10 absences is an issue per semester for the state in regard to policy. After 10 absences, credit could be denied, we'll say, depending on the reasoning for the student absence.
And Hetty, how does Arkansas compare to other states?
Well, I think that this level of 1 out of 10 is somewhat similar to what you see nationally, but locally you can have much higher levels of chronic absence. And what I would also say is that I think Arkansas is just beginning to start to track and monitor this data. You do have the data in your data systems, but this notion of starting to calculate levels of chronic absence, not just for each child, but actually for schools. So I've seen school districts have as high as 30% of their kids chronically absent. So while that 1 out of 10 is a statewide figure, you actually don't know what's happening in particular schools or school districts. And if chronic absence is affecting, let's say, 30% of your kids, it's not just a problem for the individual child who's missing school, it's actually a problem for the entire classroom, because the teacher's having to struggle to figure out whose academic need they're going to meet that day. How are they going to make sure everyone gets access to the curriculum when you have a couple kids who might have missed out?
And play catch up when those kids get back to school.
Absolutely. And if you have large class sizes, it's extremely difficult. So you need to not just track it for individual kids, you actually need to look at rates for schools by grade, by district, so that you can see whether you have patterns that require different kinds of resources to intervene. And that's where I think Arkansas is just starting to look at the possibilities for doing that.
So we know it's an issue, but why are kids missing so many days?
There are a number of reasons why kids miss. For example, I heard this morning a grandfather talk about his wife taking his granddaughter, or maybe 2 granddaughters, to shop, you know, just taking them out of school. But they don't really think about that. But that ranges from that kind of reason for missing to chronic illness. And many school districts are stepping up to try to attack that issue of chronic illness, especially for those who can't help themselves. Children who can't help themselves.
Not just health issues, though. They could have transportation problems, would be another issue on getting the kids to and from school, and socioeconomic issues that come into play.
We actually think about those reasons as falling into sort of 3 buckets. One is discretion. You don't really realize you're missing so much school. You don't realize school is important in kindergarten, let's say. One is aversion. You're actually avoiding school because the school curriculum isn't engaging, or let's say there's bullying going on in the classroom, or you're not feeling successful in school, and so you avoid it. The third are these barriers: health, transportation. And one of the key things is to talk to kids and families to find out which of these reasons, what's causing the absences, because they will actually help to drive the solutions.
So what are the solutions? What's being done to get schools into the classroom, kids into the classroom in schools?
Well, in Arkansas, that's really all I can talk about. In particular, the school that I came from, Lavaca, I was there, superintendent there for 6 years. We had several different means to try to improve our attendance rates. One was looking at our overall student body, looking to see why the students are absent, and many of them had illness problems, whether it be asthma or just having to go to the doctor. There was no provider, no dental provider, no optometrist, no family practice, nothing in the community. In order for a child to receive service, they had to go out of town. And that could be as far as 50 miles, 100 miles. In our case, Fort Smith is within 20 miles or so, but still that's time. Lavaca is a bedroom community to Fort Smith, and the vast majority of the folks that live there work in Fort Smith. So you have to think about, we call the parent comes from work to Lavaca to pick up the child, take them back to Fort Smith. If a doctor is open, they stay at any ProMed or whatever, where they could be there for hours and hours.
So that's an entire day. It's not like you're missing just a couple of classes.
Absolutely. And so we wrote a grant, and we're fortunate enough to receive the grant to start a clinic. And the clinic just grew. It's a family practice clinic. We call it the Lavaca Wellness Center. And I say we because, you know, my heart is still there. But we immediately saw our students at school more often, and we saw our staff there more often. In fact, I think you even have some data that shows that, you know, that we had some significant improvement right off the bat. But there are many schools that are beginning to see or beginning to try to find ways to keep our kids at school and in class. And having the clinic, the kid doesn't have to leave every day. The parents don't have to miss work. So it eliminates some of those barriers. And if a child's in school or in class more often, the chances are greater that they're going to academically achieve.
And Hetty, you have a few other strategies that are in place.
Yeah, what we've seen nationally at the site level, one of the first things you can do is you just want to build a culture of attendance. You want to recognize good and improved attendance, not just perfect attendance, but motivate those kids who've had troubled attendance in the past to improve. And that can be really simple, you know, awards, acknowledgement. The second thing is actually parent and student engagement. Families so often don't know that just missing a couple days every month actually puts you at risk academically. And help families to understand attendance isn't about complying with the law. Attendance is about building a habit of success that will serve you well in school, as well as later on when you want to have a job. You still got to show up. The third thing is actually having early outreach. So the fact that you have a state data system that can help you do this so that you can find out who's at risk chronic in the very early, you know, at the first month, and find out what's going on. Because let's say, for example, you get a young child with a stomach ache because they're actually anxious about going to school. If you have, for example, a nurse or someone call that parent, realize it's really not a health issue, though it's coming in as an excused absence, you could nip that in the bud and make sure that child is coming to school and comes to school soon enough before they've missed so much class that now you got to figure out how to remediate. And then the last thing is actually having school teams that can work together to look at their attendance data, look at their attendance practice, and figure out if there are these systemic issues. So maybe they don't yet have a school health clinic, but they see asthma, and then they can contact community partners to take action. So, you know, those are really easy strategies that every single school can take. And school districts can help by making sure they have actionable data, make sure there's positive messaging and materials, making sure there's actually shared accountability and looking at the data so that if schools are struggling academically, you're looking at whether if one of the reasons might be that kids aren't getting there in the first place.
Okay, well, some great information. Thank you both for being here and for sharing that with us tonight. Another issue facing third grade reading is summer learning loss. We've heard that students lose some of what they learn over the summer. The Boys, Girls, Adults Community Development Center and the Marble Elaine School District have created a program that helps students retain and continue learning during the summer break.
I enjoy reading I like entertaining books and I like entertaining books and informational books. Fun books like each books, but some of the books are educational but they're fun, and some of the books are just fun. But I love to read because reading take me places that I've never been before.
Tyron is a great student. He's a wonderful student and a wonderful, wonderful reader.
Reading is the foundation for all the other subjects. Over the summer, students can lose anywhere between 2 to 3 grade levels in reading if they're not exposed to some kind of reading activities or just reading at home, during church, or whatever it may be.
The ones that came out of the summer program, one of the things I've noticed with them, those are my ones who loves to go to the library. In the morning time, they want to go to the library before I think the library is even ready to start checking out books. They're ready to go to the library like first thing in the morning. And I've also noticed about them, they're the ones that always has a book in their desk. They're not the ones that you have to tell, go get a book. They already have a book accessible to them, where when it's independent time or free time, they have that book right there where they can start reading. The summer opportunity for my student gives them an opportunity to better themselves, to become better readers, to become better learners, just to become a better person overall.
To discuss how to assist students in retaining knowledge over the summer, joining me are Levita Wills-Hell, Network Coordinator for the Arkansas Out of School Network, and once again, Jared Cleveland, the Assistant Commissioner of Fiscal and Administrative Services at the Arkansas Department of Education. Thanks for joining us again, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start off with, what do we know about how summer learning opportunities impact reading levels?
Well, we know that in Arkansas, typically the socioeconomically disadvantaged children can regress over the summer with their reading comprehension skills, whereas the non-disadvantaged students who are exposed to, let's say, digital media or other summer programs can actually improve their reading comprehension levels.
So we know it's important. So do Arkansas kids have access to these summer learning opportunities?
Well, right now we know that there are about 17% of Arkansas school children who are participating, and what that means is there are about 82,000 young people who do have access. But I know that the need is greater, and according to the After School Alliance, we know that there are about 233,000 of our Arkansas's youth who do not have access to these kinds of quality learning experiences.
So what is being done to improve upon the programs and get kids involved? Either one of you.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we've been working on is the Arkansas Positive Youth Development Act, which would create more funding. And I think what we know is that some of the barriers are transportation, obviously cost, convenience of location. And so one of the critical pieces of this legislation would be to make sure that schools and communities really partner, and that you create a greater awareness not only of the need, but opportunities within existing communities whereby kids can have access to these quality learning experiences.
And what do parents need to look for when they're looking for summer programs, quality summer programs?
Yeah. Well, you know, at the very least, we know that parents want their children to be safe. Mm-hmm. Once you cross that threshold, however, I think you need to think about, are these programs really engaging the child in learning? And so daily opportunities for young people to experience high quality instruction in reading and math, and in addition to that, cultural enrichment. And so these programs ought to be engaging, they ought to be fun, they ought to be operated by highly trained and well-qualified staff, and that it ought to be experiential learning so that it's hands-on and that the children actually do get to have some choice in some of the activities.
Jared, is there a site that you can go to, parents can go to, that lists all the summer activities in your community, or any kind of a comprehensive database like that?
The one that goes through the Department of Education, they can go to arkansased.org, and 21st Century Learning Centers. That's a 21 CCLC program, and it's a granted program for, I guess, not just public schools, but
it's for communities, schools, and it's open for, and so there are a lot of community-based organizations who are operating those programs and funded by the Department of Education.
And they're high quality. The old school district where I was superintendent, Lavaca, had a 21 CCLC program at the elementary, middle, and high. It offered before school programming, after school programming, and limited summer programming. And a lot of it was enrichment and extended academic support. just a great opportunity for children.
And when we're talking about funding, is there adequate funding for the program?
Well, really there isn't, and currently in the state of Arkansas there is no dedicated state funding to support these programs. And so, as I mentioned earlier, in 2011 the Positive Youth Development Grant Program Act was passed, and unfortunately it's not funded, although folks are working very hard to secure that funding, and hopefully during the next session we will. But this would provide what I would consider to be long-term sustainable programming or funding for these programs. And then, as we've already mentioned, some of the elements around attending to the needs of the whole child, the social, emotional, the cognitive, and the physical, and well-balanced, deep, rich, engaging programming that supports student achievement and also life skill development. And that's what's really needed around the state.
Is there any kind of financial assistance for parents that are wanting to send their kids to summer camps and programs that maybe are not as cost efficient as others?
You know, that's really going to be on a case-by-case basis, really, and unfortunately that's why this funding is needed, so that you really do have an opportunity for kids who need it the most to have these experiences.
Any other efforts across the state to try to get quality summer programs and get kids involved?
I think there are a whole lot of community-based organizations and faith-based organizations, and I know in particular the Nehemiah Network and other groups are working to ensure that kids have quality reading materials and mentoring during the summer, and they're working actively with other community-based organizations and summer programs to do that.
Okay. Anything else that you guys would like to share on the topic?
Well, you know, I think the bottom line to this is that when parents are surveyed, upwards of 90% of those parents recognize the need and the difference that these programs can make in the lives of their children, and about 86% of those parents really would support public funding for these programs.
Also want to talk about the Positive Youth Development Act. What is this?
Well, it would create a new program, a new grant program, actually housed within the Department of Education and also overseen in part by the Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education. And the real simple answer is that folks in the communities would be able to apply for grants to actually support existing programs, or in some cases create new summer programs. And so this would be an opportunity for communities like Lavaca and other communities to expand upon what they've done and actually reach a new group of kids.
And have kids input too, because
Absolutely.
it has to be fun for the kids who want to spend their summer in these programs.
Absolutely. You know, summer is a magical time. It was a magical time for me, and you don't want to take that away from kids. So you really do have to find a way, I think, to balance obviously the need for emphasis on learning, but also attend to their need to explore and learn new things and expose them to new opportunities that they may not otherwise experience.
And even if there's a quality library in your community, maybe take them to the library several days a week just to get them exposed to books and out in
Sure, local libraries are open in the summer and offer programs, but I do know that there are some school districts out there who may have extended opportunities to open their libraries in the summer.
We saw the clip beforehand before we started discussing this, and it was talking about the Boys, Girls, Adults Community Development Center in the Marble Lane School District. Are either one of you familiar with that program, and how has that been effective?
Yeah, Miss Beatrice Shelby is the director there, and I can recall that that program is a long-standing program within that community. And really they are working not only in the Marble community, but they're also supporting students and children in the Elaine community, which is nearby. And so, you know, that's another example of a community-based program that works collaboratively to find ways to engage children, to use all of the resources, and still there's a great need.
Okay, well, thank you both for being here. And we were talking about getting the community involved and getting parents involved, and that is another issue facing school readiness and also reading levels. Several schools in the Springdale School District operate family literacy programs to connect parents, students, and teachers. Here's an example of how this works at Parson Hills Elementary School.
We didn't have a lot of parent participation, and that was one of the things that we had concerns about. And I think a lot of times the parents just feel uncomfortable coming to the school to talk to us, and so the family literacy program has brought those parents to the school.
I decided to do it because sometimes my son
bring homework to home, and I don't know how to help him. So I thought maybe that will help me to help him.
I used to speak a little bit good English, but well, my English is not perfect, but it's been improved a lot. Now I can read like telling them my story, like with questions and exclamations. I'm like doing a drama with them, like living the story, reading and living the story.
The whole family literacy initiative is just that, getting families literate. And so if they can come to school and be learning some English, but also go into the classroom to be looking at what their kids are learning in the school, to learn how to use a computer, to understand the language that their kids are learning and what it means. You know, when the kids bring homework, that's like, oh yes, I understand what you're supposed to do because I was there. That on top of the symbol of what it means to have your parent coming to school with you. You know, these kids, wow, school must be important. Mom comes to school with me and she's learning, or you know, or dad's learning. With the parents that are in family literacy, their kids are the ones that are some of the highest achieving.
And we're back to talk about the vital connection between parent, school, and community. Lavina Grandin, who is the Policy and Education Director with the Rural Community Alliance. We also have Dr. Andre Guerrero with us, who is Director of Programs for Language Minority Students at the Arkansas Department of Education. They're here to continue the discussion on parent and community engagement. Thank you both for being here. When we're talking about parent and community engagement, what do we mean by this, Lavina?
Well, I actually think that parents are the most underused resource in the public school system. People usually think that the parent's place in the school is to volunteer, to help out with athletic events, to chaperone, field trips, and things like that are important and they're valid, but there's actually 6 national standards that are research-based for parent engagement and community engagement. And so it covers a wide spectrum and starts even before the children get in school with developing good parenting skills, for recognizing developmental milestones, learning how to help your child with school readiness and that sort of thing, nutrition, sleep patterns, and then after children get in school, parents need to be partners in their children's education and helping with, not just helping with homework, but volunteering in the classroom, things like that. But then it goes beyond that, and the research has shown that the more diverse ways that parents have been engaged in their children's education, the more it has raised children's achievement. And so they should also become engaged in decision making at the school, serve on committees for developing handbooks, hiring committees. They should attend school board meetings, even run for school board. They should even learn how to be advocates beyond the local community in policy issues that are going to affect their school or their child's learning. And then they and the school should partner to bring in possibly community resources like wraparound services that make a big difference in children's learning, like access to libraries or health services or things like that.
And it makes a big impact on the child. The child knows that you're taking an interest in their learning and it makes it important to them. Andre, tell us a little bit about that impact that community and parent engagement has on a child.
One of the things that occurred to me when I was watching some of the PSAs that were done for this series is one of the things I observed was the way in which the grade level reading and other avenues for academic success for children impact the parents in much the same way they were impacting the child. We had several students get on, children, and talk about how reading was exciting, what it did for them, how they looked forward to it, and you could see their world broadening up. and their engagement broadening with their environment. And that's the same thing that happens with parents. What we hope for will happen with children happens with parents as well. So it's a lot broader than just what we used to call parental involvement. There's been a shift now in emphasis, and I really like it. They don't call it involvement, they call it engagement now. And that suggests and requires an affirmative approach to involving parent. You must engage them, not just involve them. And it reminds me of a saying I heard used in the disability community very effectively, nothing about us without us. And I think since school is about learning in its broadest sense, it must engage the parents. And the connection between what it does academically for the child when there's parental involvement or parental engagement is just, it's indisputable. The research shows that when the child goes home and sees the parent learning along with them, and reading especially, which is critical, reading along with them, it affirms everything. What the school is doing, the student knows that the parent is behind what their teacher is giving them. It just creates a whole different environment of learning and interest and excitement that doesn't take place without that. So it's just critical that parents are engaged. The other thing I'll just briefly mention is that what I've seen, if this is going to, when this happens successfully, schools and school boards must want to do this. They must want for the parents to be engaged. And the signals and the messages and the processes for assuring that must be out there and must be communicated. As you were talking about mentioning earlier, sometimes the schools are seen as not really especially friendly places for parents to go. I know that's changing, and you find that you don't find that very often or as much as you used to, but there's still a perception that the schools may not be the places where parents can go and hold what happens there accountable, hold the schools accountable. And that's another area that maybe we would talk about, is accountability within the school systems for engaging parents.
So once the desire is there for the schools and school boards to get those parents involved, how do they reach out to the community, and how do they get the parents involved and get an accountability there? There's
many ways. You mentioned some. I think you may want to talk a little bit about that, and then I can come in also. I've got some examples.
Well, it has to be very intentional, as Andre said. It won't just happen. And I think one thing that has to be done is that the personnel at school have to be trained in cultural competency and in being sensitive to the needs of non-traditional family structures, and working with families whose schedule doesn't permit them to come into the school at the usual times to be involved and engaged. And then the schools have to train themselves to look upon parents as partners, and they have to develop an attitude that they're giving customer service, I think, to parents, and be friendly, parent friendly. They have to exhibit that in everything that they do, from the messages that they send home to bulletin boards to phone calls and emails, but constantly be courting the participation of parents in the children's education.
So it's teamwork. You have to be working together, and
That's right.
as Andre said, it has to be a friendly environment for parents.
I've got an example that I really am pleased to be able to share more publicly, and there was an article recently in the Democrat Gazette about the exemplary work that the DeQueen School District was doing with their population of students. Now it's the majority minority students with Hispanic students. Many of them are English language learners. And about 15 years ago, we got a request to do something with the parents, work with them in DeQueen. And we did extensive training. It was spread over a full year. Every other month we'd meet for a weekend. And before we started the program for training the parents, we had a community meeting, and we invited the enterprises that employed the parents, and we had 5 plant managers come to this meeting. The county judge came, school officials came, city officials came, and teachers came. And we laid out our plans, and we asked the employers if they could make sure that the parents whose children were in the school system could either have release time or they work around their schedules to make sure they participated. After the meeting, many of the plant managers came up to us and thanked us and said they had been waiting to be invited by the school system to participate in some way.
That is interesting.
And when we, as you were mentioning earlier, when we had the training, it was during times when both parents could come. We provided child care. We provided food. We contracted with members of the community to do the cooking, so it was the community's food and the community's way of eating. And we had this particular group of training sessions was conducted completely in Spanish. We had instant translation for any member of the community or the school that wanted to come in that was not fluent in Spanish, so they could understand what was being done. What we wanted to do was to work with parents so that they would have skills, again, and accountability for the school.
And a program that worked, and we're seeing more and more of those across the state. We are out of time, but we thank you both for joining us tonight. Very informative and lots of information out there for the communities, and hopefully parents will understand and try to get involved in their communities. There is a public service announcement that you will soon see airing describing this campaign and talking about reading proficiency. Here's a first-hand look.
Because I go to preschool, I'll be ready for kindergarten. I am more likely to graduate from high school. Because I don't miss school.
I won't get left behind.
I can make really good grades.
Because I learned during the summer.
I'm ready for school in the fall.
I'll have a better chance of attending college.
Because you helped me. Because of you, I can do my very best. Because I can read, I can reach my full potential.
Because reading success matters, join the Arkansas campaign for grade level reading.
Obviously, there is a lot of work being done to solve the grade level reading problem in Arkansas, but we still have a long way to go, and it will take the teamwork of our administrators, lawmakers, community leaders, and especially you parents. To find out more information about this campaign, you can go to the website ar-glr.net. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you have taken away some valuable information. Have a wonderful evening.
Raising Arkansas's Readers, the campaign for grade level reading is brought to you by a grant from the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation.